There are only 4 chapters in the Bible where Satan is not implicitly present in the world, the first 2 and the last 2. The Bible begins and ends with him out of existence. But between Genesis 3 and Revelation 20, he is a factor to be reckoned with. The Hebrew word for serpent may be connected either with an adjective noun meaning bronze, suggesting something that is shiny, or with a verb meaning to practice divination. 2 things are said about the serpent. First, a word about his character. He is crafty, subtle. These terms translate a neutral word that in the Old Testament may describe either a commendable or a reprehensible trait. Second, there is a word about the serpent's origin. He was made by God. This point is stressed to make it plain that the serpent is not a divine being, not a co-equal with God. The serpent's first attack is to suggest to Eve that God is sinister, that in fact, God is abusing her. This is the force of his question in verse 1. Would God let you see and touch these trees, i.e., raise the desire, but not let you eat any of them? A God who would do something like that certainly does not love you. Eve responds with a little hyperbole of her own. You must not touch it, in her defense of God. The serpent's second attack is to deny the truthfulness of God's word, and to suggest that disobedience, far from bringing any disadvantages, will in fact bring an advantage. You will be like God. That God is already made the couple in his likeness is moot. The serpent is suggesting another kind of likeness, a self-aggrandizing kind of likeness. No further conversation ensues between the two. Verse 6 tells us that the temptation appealed in the following order to 1. Eve's physical appetites, 2. what she could see, and 3. her imagination. Note the thrust in this temptation. The serpent does not ask homage from Eve. Rather, he indirectly suggests that she shift her commitment from doing God's will to doing her own will. This is as foolish as Jonah, who thought he could actually run from the presence of the Lord. Neither trees nor distance can put one out of the reach of the hound of heaven. You can run, but you cannot hide. The Lord begins with a question, just as the serpent has. Where are you? This question does not mean that God is ignorant of Adam's whereabouts. Rather, it is God's way of drawing Adam out of hiding, to give Adam and Eve the opportunity to face God themselves. God does not just direct monologues toward us. He asks questions and he listens carefully to the answers given. Maybe God at times appears to limit his knowledge in order to really listen. Individuals who know everything are seldom good listeners. They would rather talk than listen. Adam does 2 wrong things. First, he hides rather than face the truth. His fear drives him from God rather than to God. Second, he blames his spouse and God. Adam refuses to admit that even complicity is a way of being involved in wrongdoing. Eve is not any better than her husband. She too looks for a scapegoat. What Adam and Eve have in common is their refusal to accept personal responsibility for their actions. The consequences of sin are detailed in Only the serpent is cursed. God does not curse those he created in his image. Phrases like crawl on your belly and eat dust may be understood as metaphorical expressions denoting the serpent's submission. Compare the statement made of Israel's messianic king. His enemies lick the dust. He is now himself a servant. True, snakes do crawl on their belly as a means of locomotion, possibly one reason why later biblical law prohibits the consumption of marine life that crawls on the ocean's bottom, but they do not eat dust. Wherever God curses, it is in response to somebody's behavior. Wherever God blesses, it is normally an act flowing out of his gracious will. For every time the Bible speaks of God cursing, it speaks multiple times of God blessing. God also tells the serpent that he is to be on the losing side of a battle between the seed of the woman and himself. In this eventual showdown, his head will be crushed by the seed of the woman. Is the seed collective or singular?
The Hebrew allows for either, but the Septuagint has he, the Latin Vulgate either. Has she, not without good reason many have referred to Genesis 3 as the Protevangelium, the first good news, and as yet unidentified seed of the woman will engage the serpent in combat and emerge victorious.
It is likely that Eve does not comprehend this word, but the snake is not left in the dark. He is to be cursed, a crawler, and crushed. The closest that the language comes to surfacing in the New Testament is in Paul's word about Christ's reigning until he has put all his enemies under his feet. Or even better, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. God speaks to Eve about her role as mother and as wife. Here are the 2 points where, in biblical thought, a woman experiences her highest fulfillment. And at these 2 points there will be pain and servitude. It may well be that we should read these words and verses not as prescriptions, but as descriptions by God himself of what it means to be separated from him. Note that in chapter 1, God created male and female to rule jointly. Now, in chapter 3, male rules female. Is Eve's desire for Adam normal desire, or is it a desire for domination? Given the fact that later this woman's first son murdered her second son, maybe the pain is not the physical pain of birthing, but the pain she will experience in seeing the violence in her family. God speaks to Adam about his role as a worker. Here is where the male experiences his highest fulfillment. And for him too there will be pain. If we read these words as divine mandates, then we should not see these speeches of God as his way of getting even or teaching a lesson to Adam and Eve. Sin always puts a wedge between things or people. It puts a wedge between God and humans, between man and woman, between man and himself, and now between man and the soil. But the Lord clothes Adam and Eve with garments of skin. The important thing here is garments rather than skins. God provides a covering for this naked couple, but it is a divine covering, not a human covering. It is important, too, note that God covers the couple before he expels them. Here is grace before law. The Lord banishes Adam and Eve from Eden, not because of what they have done, but because of what they might do if allowed to remain in the garden, and restricts re-entry to Eden via cherubim and a flaming sword. Adam has indeed become like one of us, but not in the sense the serpent said he would. Anytime a person believes he can decide for himself what is right and wrong, he becomes God. He has usurped the divine prerogative. I hope this video helped understand these chapters to fully comprehend the perfect plan of salvation. This is a first step. Share this video and help to spread knowledge.